Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this symposium entitled Meeting Our Cybersecurity Challenges, Collaboration and Training in Canada. This symposium is a part of the pre-conference program for the Canadian Science Policy Conference, and we're very happy to welcome all of the conference attendees to this session. My name is Charles Finlay, and I am the Executive Director of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Ryerson University, which is a university center for innovation and collaboration in cybersecurity. I am very pleased to host this symposium and to moderate our first panel. Our hope over the next 2 hours or so is to dive into two major issues that are central to how Canada will meet its cybersecurity challenges over the years to come. Those issues are, first, how Canadian institutions can collaborate effectively in order to make progress in cybersecurity. And second, how we can start to meet the very serious labor market shortage in cybersecurity in Canada and internationally. This afternoon, we have two distinguished panels that will each address one of these questions. And our first panel, and you see the panelists here with me, is called Playing Well with Others, Approaches to Cybersecurity Collaboration in Canada. And I will introduce our panelists in just a moment. Our second panel, which will begin at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time, is entitled Tackling the Labor Market Shortage in Cybersecurity, and will be hosted by my colleague, Rashmi Hashim. Let's now turn to our first panel. As we come to the end of 2020, the stakes in cybersecurity could not be higher. To take just two recent worrying trends, security organizations have seen serious increases in ransomware attacks and attacks on critical infrastructure. Add to this a recent concerted effort by at least two sovereign states to undermine the US election infrastructure. Woven into these issues are pressing questions about technologies that are developing fast and creating new pressures. It is clear that we all have vital work to do to answer cybersecurity's pressing global challenges. The question for us in this panel is how we can meet those challenges, not just in terms of the substance of research, commercialization, training, and public education efforts, but how organizations can work together effectively. It seems trite to say this, and maybe it's very obvious, but effective collaboration is going to be most important in developing robust solutions to this global problem. There are many stakeholders: universities and colleges, federal, provincial, and municipal governments, institutions building and maintaining public infrastructure, law enforcement and security agencies, media, and of course, private industry of all kinds. And these institutions come from all corners of the globe and emerge from operational traditions that are often quite different. So what are some of the keys to successful collaboration in cybersecurity? What does it look like, and what best practices can emerge? Indeed, what do we mean when we say collaboration in cybersecurity? I am very lucky, and we are very lucky to have here with us this afternoon 5 distinguished cybersecurity researchers from 5 institutions that are a part of a new collaborative platform called the National Cybersecurity Consortium, and who each also have deep experience in other collaborative structures of many kinds. They will share with us their ideas about how collaboration in cybersecurity can work best. Let me begin by introducing our panelists. Dr. Mourad Debbabi is a professor at the Concordia Institute for Information Systems Engineering and interim dean of the Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science. He is the founder and director of the Security Research Center at Concordia University and holds the NSERC Hydro-Quebec Senior Industrial Research Chair in Smart Grid Security. For the past 39 years, Dr. Atty Ghorbani has held a variety of academic positions and is currently a professor of computer science and Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in cybersecurity and director of the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity. He is the co-founder of the Privacy Security Trust Network in Canada and its annual international conference. He is also the founding director of the Laboratory for Intelligence and Adaptive Systems Research. Dr. Florian Kirshbaum is an associate professor in the David R. Cheriton School of Computer Science at the University of Waterloo and director of the Waterloo Cybersecurity and Privacy Institute. Dr. Kirshbaum's focus is on real-world systems with cryptographic security mechanisms to achieve provable security guarantees, and his work has been applied to products for databases, supply chain management, and tracking. Dr. Emily Laidlaw is an associate professor at the University of Calgary Faculty of Law and member of the Institute for Security, Privacy, and Information Assurance. She is a Canada Research Chair in cybersecurity law. Dr. Laidlaw's research is in the areas of information and technology law, cybersecurity, human rights, online content regulation, and corporate responsibility. In April 2019, Dr. Laidlaw was appointed the ethics advisor to Calgary City Council. And Dr. Atty Mashatan is assistant professor at the Ted Rogers School of Information Technology Management at Ryerson University and founder and director of the Cybersecurity Research Lab at Ryerson. She is a leading expert in cryptography, blockchain technology, quantum resistant solutions, enterprise security architecture, and Internet of Things security. Dr. Mashatan serves on the boards of directors at Compute Ontario, a consortium which serves to drive the province's capacity in advanced research, computing, and big data. And last but not least, she is on the board of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, which is dedicated to solving critical cybersecurity challenges. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for participating in our panel this afternoon. I'll advise our attendees to please send in your questions throughout the session. I'll have an opportunity to take those questions and pose them to our panelists as we go through the session today. So I'd ask you to please use the Q&A button, I understand, to ask those questions of our panelists, and I will put those questions to our panelists as we move through this. So let's start off perhaps with some basics. I'd like to ask each one of you to talk in general terms about one or two collaborations that you were engaged in. Or that you're engaged in now that is successful in your view, and talk a little bit about why it is successful. Feel free to talk about the structure of the collaboration or the working approach that was adopted or any other aspect. And as well, please feel free to define collaboration in any way you like in giving us your thoughts. Let's start with Ali Ghorbani. Ali.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you to CSPC conference organizers for the opportunities. So, Charles, how much time do I have to answer this question?
You've got an hour and a half, Ali.
Okay, I'll use most of it.
About three or 4 minutes. Take as much time as you need.
So I can give a number of examples, but I'll give one which stands at the top of my list. This is an industry collaboration that lasted nearly 2 decades, from early 2000 to today. We started working with this company, cybersecurity company, when it was a startup, became a small and medium-sized company, and later was acquired by IBM. We started our R&D with the company, recognizing that they need timely, practical solutions to their practical problems, and that we need to earn their trust by delivering our solutions on time. Our goal was that our research results should give them competitive edge in the market. We made sure that to fully align our research and development goals with the company's objectives, and more importantly, we worked hard to understand their language and their true needs by spending a lot of time with their technical people and their management team. The framework we put in place in collaboration, this collaboration later was adopted in many other industry collaborations, which basically consists of one that we made sure to always have at least one a champion or co-investigator from the company to work with on a weekly basis. This helped us to learn from their team as much as they learned from our technical team. We made sure that the initial problem set always comes from the company, and we work with them to refine it, change it, adapt it as needed. We always wrote a statement of the work for that project or problem and received company's approval. In that, we explain the project, and we also list the R&D tasks with timelines, deliverables, and milestones. Recognizing the companies change their objectives and goals quite often, we made sure that we stay basically flexible and adapt to their needs and changes. We made sure that the company fully understand our research methodology and originality of our research results and value of our outcome. This helped them to also understand why is it important, the need for fundamental and curiosity research in order to develop original techniques and solutions. We never missed a deadline, a major deadline or deliverables. This was critical for building trust and credibility. In other words, for most part, we acted like a business in the eyes of our industry partner. We leveraged their resources and their help, their money and funding to obtain other funding to increase the amount of R&Ds that we can do for that company. And the core of the R&D team was always made of our students, especially graduate students. And this actually helped them to hire a number of them, which in a nutshell, we helped them with their recruitment of highly qualified personnel for their company. So this is a clear example that I have from what we did with this company, that to date, we are actually doing the same with IBM that acquired this company.
Terrific. Thank you, Ali. Atty, your thoughts?
So I'm smiling because I was going to share a similar example, except that mine is only 4 years old, not 20 years old. So after what Dr. Ghorbani said, I don't know how else I can add to that. That was awesome. So let me try to put a little bit of a spin on it. So I would define collaboration as a joint effort between multiple various stakeholders that have seemingly competing priorities or different priorities. So we already talked about academia, industry, and government. And if you ask a typical academic, their goal is to do research and train people. If you ask a typical industry partner, their goal is not necessarily to do research. They look at, it's a business. They look at their bottom line, right? So these don't necessarily align. And the collaborations, in my experience and in my opinion, that are successful are those that you have actually spent enough time in understanding the parallel universe that the other stakeholder lives and operates in, and you have found an alignment, a common ground that describes the alignment. As Ali mentioned very articulately, this means that you need to first understand their problem set, their challenges, their pain points, and then help them articulate it in a way that the other stakeholder can actually help with. So industry has the industry focus or industry defined problems, and academia, as an example, has the resources to cutting edge tools and technologies and talents and human capital to actually stay cutting edge. There's often a gap between state of the art and state of the practice. So if you can find those alignments that the industry is trying to move the needle on a state of practice, and academia wants to move the needle on a state of art, and we can help each other get there, that would be a conducive environment, set of ingredients that you need for a win-win situation to have a fruitful collaboration. So before I came back to academia, I used to work in the industry for several years, and there I learned, it was a very humbling experience for me. There I learned that there's a lot of problems that in academia we can take for granted. And understanding those problems and the fact that academics can really help with those type of problems gave me this, helped me with establishing this common ground. And I've tried to reach out to industry partners, and I've been successful so far in speaking their language. And Ali mentioned that as well. It's important to understand their parallel universe and help them understand our universe, how we can help them with these resources and cutting edge research that we do.
Thank you, Atty. Mourad, your thoughts?
Actually, I have had the pleasure and the privilege of collaborating with both government and industry in the past years. So I did work with many agencies, from the Competition Bureau to the CRTC to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, National Defense, and so on. Similarly, I did work with many companies like Hydro-Quebec, Ericsson, Google, and Bell, and other companies. So what I did appreciate the most in the collaboration with these organizations is that they bring much more relevance to our research. They help us to define research objectives that can, if well executed, will have definitely a positive and strong impact on their operations. I'd like to take the example of working with government. So in working with RCMP, the CRTC, the Competition Bureau, and National Defense, we did a lot of work on threat intelligence generation, and for the purpose of supporting investigations. And in this regard, we did come up with technologies that can help detecting attacks, spamming campaigns, malware attacks, reconnaissance activities, and so on. And it was very important to do this with industry, because who knows better cyber investigation than RCMP or CRTC or Competition Bureau? They do this on a daily basis. On our side, we design and implement technologies. On their side, they do on a daily basis investigations. So they help us, they stress test the intel that we are generating. We gain a lot, very important insights from them in terms of what is an actionable intelligence and so on. So by working with them, we did learn a lot on the investigation processes, on what type of actionable and timely intelligence is needed to detect, prevent, and mitigate cyber attacks. But on the other side, together, we designed and implemented technologies, and we advanced the state of the art in the area of threat hunting and vulnerability research and threat intelligence generation. I'd like to take, so it was an extremely positive experience, and we did leverage each other. We did combine expertise, knowledge, and skills and resources to reach these objectives. The other example that I'd like to mention is working with the industry. As I mentioned, I will take just two companies that we work a lot with. One is Hydro-Quebec, and the other is Ericsson. So we have 6 industrial research shares with these two companies, an investment of around $10 million. And we have been working with them since the early 2000s, especially with Ericsson, and maybe in the past 6-7 years with Hydro-Quebec. And what I appreciate the most is that we have teams with researchers from the university, students, postdocs, faculty members, and we have also subject matter experts from industry. We meet very frequently. We set the research agenda together. We collaborate on executing the deliverables, and also we work together on how to take the technology or the IP that is developed to have a positive impact on these companies. So, for instance, with Hydro-Quebec, we deploy students, postdocs in their security operations center, and they help with the security operation of these companies. We have students, for example, that go to the Hydro-Quebec Research Institute and try to work with them on the tech transfer activities. So, extremely positive experience, and we share everything. We share the research, the tech transfer, and also how to take the technologies to the business units. So this is possible because we build the trust, as Ali mentioned. We get to know each other, and we agreed on the agenda. We did set the agenda together, and it was an extremely successful experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Mourad. Emily, your thoughts?
Thanks, Charles. It's interesting hearing everybody speak because it reminded me that I think law is in a way new to the collaborative experience in this space, and so where I have seen it successful is almost what Atty was mentioning, this idea that you're engaging with people with these kind of parallel universe. So I was part of this multi-institution kind of consortium, and it was kind of, we had funding from various institutions, and it was several universities, and we partnered with industry, and the way that the collaboration worked was essentially knowledge sharing, right? So I can't say that we necessarily produce something actionable at the end, which is in a way maybe what the flaws were about it that we can discuss as we go along. But it was incredibly valuable to put people with these different worlds in a room to start actually having these conversations about what their experiences were, and then maybe helping push along each, others' research projects, or having conversations with industry about ways we could, contribute to what they were doing. So I would say that is one of the most successful models that I have participated in, and I think the more recent one that I am working with is kind of working on OECD guidelines, which is slightly, to the side of what we're talking about here. But through that experience, I've been realizing how key it is to have every stakeholder as part of the conversation in trying to create something. And it reminded me that perhaps there were certain stakeholders that were in fact missing from this great collaborative experience I had before in kind of the multi-institution work I did when I was in the United Kingdom. And one of the things I'm seeing in law is we have to work to collaborate within our own field as much as it is to work with others. So maybe that is why we're a few steps back. One of the things that I've been noticing is that, for example, national security is its own bubble that sort of at least in law, kind of grows up in one particular field while the private sector technology lawyers and privacy lawyers are kind of in its own other bubble. So learning to kind of collaborate and knowledge share even within law to then have those conversations about the ways that we can engage with other stakeholders, I think is critical. And I've seen a lot of great movement on that, and those two bodies that I was a part of. But again, as we go along further, we can talk about where this needs to go.
Terrific. Thank you, Emily. Florian.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on this panel. So we have 5 academics here. So obviously everybody is talking about at least one partner being an academic institution, and one could even say that there are collaborations where there are 2 academic partners, but I don't even want to go there. So Atty has nicely alluded to that she has worked in industry. I have worked for 15 years in industry before I started as a professor about 4 years ago. So for me, it's actually not 2 worlds. For me, it is two things that are very familiar. And something I haven't told Charles is that I am also the NSERC RBC chair in data security. So I cannot tell you which company I'm talking about, but please make your own inferences. Something which is a recurring theme for all of the questions we have here is for every economy in the world right now, the big challenge is to come to what's called sometimes digitization. Essentially, it's building a software industry, getting all services, all products based on produced and based on a software basis with data collection. And in these industry collaborations, it's extremely important, as already has been alluded to, that the incentives are aligned. There needs to be a very clear business case. There needs to be a clear motivation to innovate, right? Not to just reach the state of the practice, reduce costs, or do something else, but there needs to be a clear need on the industry partner to innovate, to distinguish themselves in the areas of security and privacy. And the third aspect is that the industry partners need to be able to deliver in the way that Ali and also Mourad described, is that the academic partners need to be able to get their part done, and then ultimately there is again a next step. The industry partners need to be able to execute on this, right? So there needs to be a way of getting this off of the paper or prototypical code that has been developed into something that can run in a production environment, and that is often a very big step, and it is not clear how to bridge this gap between just starting getting ideas down and then ultimately getting them into a production environment. And there are a number of things how this could be done, and if everybody is pulling along the same lines, if the academic partners go down the road as Ali described, and see that they deliver quality, and the industry partners are committed to bringing this the next step, then I think great things can happen. And I'm still hopeful that eventually you'll see a great announcement that our industry partner has deployed a world-leading product that even beats Google and Microsoft, right? So that's what I'm working towards.
Fantastic, thank you, Florian. And I'd like to dig into this just a little bit, because we've talked about and you've all given great examples of successful collaborations that you've led. I'm interested in why, or what was the elements of that collaboration that made it successful. And a number of you have spoken, I think, really about clarity of outcomes, about trust between the parties, about direct engagement between the parties on a very frequent basis in order to meet outcomes. But I'd like to just explore that a little bit more, and maybe we can take this from the opposite way. So maybe we can look at collaborative opportunities that didn't really work, and why you think they didn't, and what those show about positive collaborative opportunities and how we can put those together. So going back to Florian, maybe Florian, I can ask you to: is there an example or a piece around a collaborative opportunity that didn't quite work, and your thoughts about why that was and what that tells us about what does work?
I can give you an example of my past. Of course, all my current collaborations are very successful. And it comes back to what I believe as the key ingredient is the need to innovate, right? So I was one partner who saw an immediate need to innovate in a certain area. We were going very many steps. We're heavily investing in developing almost a new product, way beyond prototypical code. And when we were engaging in, so what is the next step, the management changed, and the direction changed from delivering innovative products into maintaining the code that is already there and fixing bugs. And at this point of time, all the investments were basically gone. There was not even an opportunity to discuss any further. And this can always be the case with large organizations which make swift changes at the top level management. But the key component to keeping a collaboration between academia and industry alive is the need to innovate. And its second one is the need to execute, and there I believe we will get later into maybe some of the questions that are how you could execute, and there are a number of ways the current state of the art could be improved.
Excellent. Thank you, Florian. And I'll take it for granted that as we go through the downside of collaborative opportunities, this is on a no names basis. So, you know, Emily, what turning to you for your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think that, and this, I guess, talking from the perspective of law, making sure that we really listen to representatives from different fields instead of having maybe assumptions about what it is that those fields bring to the table, and then it enables you to dive deeper into ways that you can action and build off of your expertise. So, for example, law tends to be relegated to a box-ticking exercise sometimes in these collaborative exercises, and I think that we do it to ourselves sometimes because we have this focus, especially, you know, when you're in a practice environment, of risk management, right? When really law can be part of the design and the solutions and kind of the creativity from the beginning. And I've tried to think through why it is we haven't got further with it than I would be pleased with. And I think some of it is just time, right? That often when I am parts of these collaborations, everyone has these amazing things that they're doing, and we're doing great advancement in having these conversations. But the step of action in the way that at least law is meaningfully involved, I haven't seen as much of that. And I think sometimes it's because that requires our plate to be cleared, to the time to be there for the slow development of some of this that is really hard to do when we all have pressures to action and produce outputs that are much faster. And so at least this is where I would love to see some of that development, but I don't know how you create time. That's the one thing that we can't just invent, and it's hard to come by, but I think that it's really where we're going to have some source of kind of some great output.
Thank you, Emily. Mourad, your thoughts on this?
As I mentioned, I have been involved in a number of collaborations, and some of them were extremely successful, and some of them I can qualify them honestly at missed opportunities. And sometimes these missed opportunities, they come from the fact that sometimes people think at cybersecurity as a turf issue. So rather than thinking as a group or as a consortium or joint forces and try to address the different challenges of cybersecurity together, sometimes some people, some institution might think that we can do this alone. We don't need the others. And honestly, this is a mistake. And I think we all benefit. I mean, nature did things very well in distributing the talent, the knowledge, the expertise among different people that are coming from different disciplines, different backgrounds. And I think we have a lot to gain together if we join forces on addressing the grand challenges of cybersecurity. The other thing that I have seen, which is a factor that inhibit collaboration in the area of cybersecurity R&D, is sometimes the fear. So people are in fear of sharing data or going to other people. You know, if you are working for a particular organization and you start sharing data, the fear is that what if you get complaints, what if the data get disclosed, and so on. So it is good to be conservative when it comes to cybersecurity, but at the same time, it should not prevent you from moving and progressing and working with others. I think we can put the right safeguards, the right protocols, the right processes to safeguard the collaboration. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that as a concrete examples of maybe 5 years ago, I did team with some colleagues from government and some friends from the industry. Some of them are really pioneers in the internet technologies, worldwide leaders in this area. And we went to a consortium of companies that basically executives in a particular sector that I'm not going to name. And we made a proposal to them to share in real-time data, raw data, and subject it to analytics and extract facts that will give us situational awareness of what's happening in Canada in terms of cybersecurity, and also derive intel that that we can act on to mitigate the risk of threats. And I think it didn't happen, not because people are not interested in the project as such, but essentially the fear of sharing, the fear of the impact on the brand of their companies and so on. So from my perspective, that was a missed opportunity. On the other hand, recently we did work with another organization, and you said, Charles, we don't name organization in this, and that's a good example actually. That organization demonstrated a lot of leadership. They convinced 140 plus organizations to come together and to share data and subject the data to analytics and generate cybersecurity intel. And it is a success. It is really a success. So I think we need to put fears aside, and we need to put the right safeguards and collaborate, because the challenges ahead are big, and we need to work together to address them.
Thank you very much, Mourad. Atty, your thoughts on this?
So Charles, I'll be straight on this with the answers from, I've been around for some time, so I'm not short of giving you examples of things that didn't work. I would categorize things that happened over the years in three classes. One is some things didn't go well or as we expected because of the company. Companies that come in and give you a problem and walk away and expecting in few months or year there'll be a solution for them, such a collaboration would never work. Their involvement in building the solution over the course of time is a key to success. And second is the company that come into academia and expect academic researchers to be more of developers from computer science perspective than researchers producing innovation and research results. That also doesn't work. When they bring their expectations from academic community to come down from research aspects to more of doer aspects, then that kind of cases didn't work for me as well. So that's the industry side. On the academic side, it didn't work well because when we actually didn't understand the industry's language. And the solution that we started providing was not what they were looking for. So industry, academia not producing clear outcome that is practical and helps the company with their business agenda, normally will not succeed. And then academia also expecting too much of a company in terms of resources also sometimes will not work. So the third category for me is unexpected, things that you'd have no control over. So in academic, as we work with students, researchers, and things is floating and moves, and there are cases that your research team will kind of become to the extent that you will not be able to deliver the results to the company. So there are unexpected cases, or the company changes totally hands and moves to another or be sold or acquired, or changes the direction totally and doesn't need to work on on the project that you're working with. So those are unexpected and not foreseen kind of a situation could also end up a collaboration not being successful.
Thank you, Ali. And Atty, your thought?
Yes, so we talked about different stakeholders and that they're trying to optimize a different function. They have seemingly different goals. So what can be very difficult to juggle is when these stakeholders are looking at each other opportunistically in a way that they expect this other stakeholder to provide them something that is not really their core business, okay? I'll give you two examples. So if an academic partner is expecting industry to come and sponsor their research, be that generous, that's not going to work. So they can collaborate with you, provide some cash on the table, so long as you're trying to solve their problem or a problem that they're interested in and they see it in the future, that it's something that they're going to be useful to them. It is going to be part of their business. So if an academic partner is looking at industry as generous, sponsoring research, like what Ali mentioned, asking them too much of what is not going to really change their world, it's not going to work. The other way around is the same. So if an industry partner or a government agency is looking at an academic partner as a vendor to come and solve their problem and forget about innovation, forget about research, forget about your, if this is going to provide actual meaningful training to your graduate student, this is what I want. If they treat an academic partner like a vendor, it's not going to work, right? So it's important for all of these stakeholders to stay close to what their core business is, and then see how they can help the other stakeholders. And within that framework, there's nothing wrong with being opportunistic, so long as you're actually helping each other achieve your respective goals. So I've seen these things not work out, and the way to go about making sure that proactively it won't happen is clear understanding, open channel of communication, not at the inception of a collaboration when you're defining a project, but also throughout. And when you're dealing with smaller companies, yes, there's always a risk of them being acquired by a bigger company, but the core of decision makers, that doesn't really change a lot unless you're staying with them for several years, which by that point is actually very successful. Another challenge I've seen in bigger companies is that you were dealing with an executive and they were very forward, and they were really helping with defining the problem. You're in the middle of the project, and the executive moves on to another company, another department, and the new executive wants to have their own legacy, and they have competing priorities, and the project is completely dropped. So this is one of the unknowns, or something that you cannot foresee. But again, the company as a whole needs to protect the interest of the other stakeholders that are getting into this collaboration. I look at it just like, this is a marriage. You need to both be invested in this. It can't be one way, whether it's a government, academic partner, or industry.
I think that's a really great point that you make at the end there, Atty, about whether it's government or industry or another party. A lot of folks look at government in particular as not subject to those kinds of pressures in terms of folks moving around and mandates changing, as governments are, but governments are too. And in developing collaborations with governments, it's important to keep in mind those same pieces about clear understanding about lines of accountability, just as with private sector corporations. So thank you so much for that. And let's get a little bit more specific. We've talked a lot about what works and what doesn't. Let me ask, and this is a jump ball. Anybody can take this on. Is there a particular collaborative model that you think is promising in answering cybersecurity challenges in particular that you've seen? And this can be any kind of collaboration, whether it's inter-academic collaboration or collaboration that is intra-academic collaboration, collaborations inside an institution, collaboration between academic institutions, and other stakeholders, however you'd like to approach this. What great models have you seen that you think are promising?
Can I take on this first?
Absolutely, Ali.
George, to me, I'm dreaming and always been dreaming in cybersecurity. A collaboration model should be a multidisciplinary collaboration with 3 legs: government, industry, and academia. You remove one of them, you will miss opportunities, and the collaboration will not be fully functional. And given that this is a global challenge and also from Canada perspective, a national challenge, it is important that all the stakeholders, in this case of government, and I'm talking about all levels of governments, from federal to provincial to municipalities, and industry of all different scales and size, and academic, and also other institutions, research institutes that are involved in this. This would be an ideal collaborative model where you actually can achieve very quality results for the problems that we're facing.
Ali, let me just ask you about that, and others jump in here too, but that having a collaboration of that kind amongst many different stakeholders, obviously and many different kinds of stakeholders, requires special attention to some of the collaborative best practices that we've talked about. Maybe you can just touch on those, but it seems to me that the wider you draw the circle, and that's appropriate for a national and international challenge like this, the more you have to pay attention to the trust and the candor and the communication and the time and the other pieces that we've talked about.
So from my perspective, of course, this will be drilled down into a specific challenge where different government departments and industry sector and academic research teams will be involved. But bottom line is that the challenges in each, whatever challenge we're talking about, requires levels of efforts and access to resources, data, information, test cases, etc., that without collaboration of all these 3 legs will not be possible. We have cases in network security that requires government's involvement because of the access to data, to intelligence, etc. Or we have cases in critical infrastructure protection that requires the involvement of the sectors in that infrastructure field, as well as the government that controls policy, practices, etc., that come in and help. Plus the fact that academia should be there to look into innovation and the next generation of solutions. So I think from the perspective of this problem, our cybersecurity problems involves all sectors. It demands that all sectors be involved, because without one not being there, you're actually missing either on a data side or on a policy side, on our practice side, on the implementation side, etc. There will be issues that you have to face.
Yes, Emily.
Yeah, as Ali was talking, and I entirely agree with Ali. And I wanted to add actually another stakeholder that seems to come up in a lot of the work that I was doing as well was civil society. So I think that we were really looking at all the players who were on the table. It would be, government, industry, academics, and also civil society. And some of the interesting things I'm seeing proposed sometimes is realizing, as Ali said, that if it's across all these different disciplines, we need all these disciplines at the table, but you almost need some, if I was pie in the sky, somebody that realized the way that the cybersecurity and technology issues were kind of diffused across all these industries, so had oversight to kind of touch into all these different sectors to bring people together. And right now, even the collaborations seem to be siloed and not talking to each other. So it's, taking the collaborations even further and finding ways for all of them to talk together.
And Emily, just on that, I think your point about civil society is critical. Would you view that as a coordinating organization within government? Do you view it as an agency that would lie outside of government? Would it be associated with academic institutions, or could it be any of those? And maybe just also talk a little bit more about civil society and what you mean by that. Do you mean not other not-for-profits or other kinds of institutions?
Yes. Okay. So there's two, I guess, two things here. When I think of civil society, I generally am thinking about the not-for-profit organizations that are advocating particular issues and engage. So, for example, privacy-based organizations, technology rights organizations. Increasingly, I don't think that we can talk about some of the technical solutions or legal solutions without engaging with the ones that are advocating on behalf of these particular rights. In particular, I'm thinking of some of the privacy-based issue-oriented organizations. So as for a body that would look at this, you know, I know that the United Kingdom is looking at creating almost this oversight regulator that doesn't itself regulate, but is kind of has its fingers in the pots of all the different regulators and organizations so that it can start identifying the themes and some of the data and security issues kind of across the board. And they aren't speaking, you know, just through the lens of cybersecurity. They're more talking more broadly about data and technology concerns. There's good and bad about that. You know, you are consolidating it in one body. It's government oriented. I don't know to the extent that they're really, you know, embracing multi-stakeholderism within that. I don't know. Ideally, it would. If you're not thinking of it in terms of an agency, and I like the idea of some agency at this point. The other option is I'm quite interested in where this National Cybersecurity Center is going. It is a great experiment. It is just getting off the ground. So I know, for example, law hasn't been extensively engaged yet, but they're quite aware that it hasn't been. But it really gets to the heart of the idea that if we're going to tackle these issues, then it needs to be some sort of public and private collaboration. And that sometimes the tools to resolve this are as much, you know, nudging, whether it's through education, whether it's through information sharing, whether it is through developing particular technologies or technical solutions. So I like what I like the idea of what it could be, but I guess it's a wait and see in some ways right now to see if it could become that.
And we can't have a conversation about law in Canada without confronting federalism and all of its problems. So the question also is, I mean, the UK being a bit of a different model, one of the questions for us obviously would be which level of government would have control or inputs. Would it be the federal government or the provincial government, even municipal governments that would be engaged? So that's a question for a regulator of that kind.
I think we're facing a constitutional crisis on that front. And I am not a constitutional expert, but I keep going next door to the experts saying this is going to be the issue because tech does not respect borders in general, but in particular our provincial borders. And so what we're seeing is often piecemeal, strange laws that are for the offline world. And I mean, you know about this particular area, Charles. And so I actually think that we're hurtling towards a crisis in that space.
I'm always keen to have conversations about law and cybersecurity. Emily and I can talk about this as I mentioned, federalism. I could see other people sort of looking like, but we can talk about this for ages. But it's such a critical point. Florian, you had your hand up.
So I agree with everything has been said so far. Is that we need to get all of those stakeholders together. But I would like to make a particular statement for what type of industry is needed, because industry is not equal to industry. And as I said at the beginning, for every country in the world, the challenge right now is to develop a software industry to have something to feed the people 50 years from now. And in part of the challenge I see is in building up this industry. So we had the example from Ali from startups, We had the example of end users like Hydro-Quebec from Mourad. But we really need to make sure that we have players who can bring innovation in cybersecurity and privacy to scale. And this needs to come from all three aspects. This needs to be larger companies, this needs to be startups, small and medium-sized companies, and even I would argue that there is a gap between what academia can produce and what industry can consume initially. So we probably would need some sort of a way of getting initial results into a more mature stage. I know that some people here are engaging in this type of model already, but it is always difficult to set these kind of models up. So I think that all three aspects need to be covered, and that we need to have the few players we have be present as part of academia, as the cybersecurity companies. We need to have end users so that we have an actual business case to work on, and we need to see how we can push out innovation from academia into this pipeline. And this will take a lot of time. This will not happen overnight. It will take a lot of investment, a lot of patience, but in the end, I hope it will pay off.
And Florian, to exactly this point, and Atty, just before we'll come to you, we have a question from participants, and it's directly to the point: who should moderate the collaboration in all groups and amongst all groups, government, academic, industry? So that's a question posed by participants. Atty, over to you.
To answer the question.
Or to whatever contribution you'd like. That was just a question that came in.
Actually, it's interesting. What I was going to talk about when I raised my hand would lead me to the answer of this question that was asked. So I used to work for one of the major 5 banks in Canada, CIBC, and in around 2012, 2013, banks were subjected to very sophisticated, orchestrated DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attack. And when you have, arch competitors talk to one another and share, if this is bringing one of the banks down, it's going to bring all the banks down. So let's not act as competitors. Let's work and help each other. So that was the first time that I saw, we're really in this all together. So let's share knowledge in cybersecurity. So I think that was a model that really worked. So this is an experience example from my previous life. And now when I'm in academia, I think we can follow the same model, that a lot of the things that one of these stakeholders looks at and try to guard, whether it's information or processes or data or whatever, that lack of trust and that competitive nature, if it comes to innovation, it's definitely a very destructive force. It definitely does not help. Okay, so to help alleviate some of that, because a lot of it is natural, a lot of it, these are, there are competitions, right? To alleviate some of that, I think if instead of looking at a big collaboration that has all the industry, all academic partners, all government organizations, if you're dissecting this or having cross cuts horizontally and vertically, it would help. For instance, if you have a collaboration among academics, policymakers, and industry in financial industry versus another one for healthcare versus another one for other critical infrastructure, these smaller, still big collaborations, but more focused collaborations can be moderated very, much easier, because at least they have within industry, they have more common ground. Within policy, they're subjected to the same compliance and regulations. There's the sort of all problems you need to solve. It's much more manageable and a lot more well understood among the people who are trying to solve it. And then you will have these bubbles that are more naturally formed, and then you can have a bigger organization that encapsulates all of that. So while principles of cybersecurity is the same, whether you're in healthcare or financial industry or any other industry, how it projects the realities of those real world problems that you're trying to solve, no matter which stakeholder you're from, is very, very specific, right? So it translates to specific problems. And then you can, once you have formed those smaller collaborations and have meaningful results, and you can elevate yourself and have this bigger overarching umbrella of mother of all collaborations. But I think it would help with, towards the answer of that question, with moderation, and also be more effective, achieving more results in a more meaningful and efficient way if you're looking at industry-specific smaller collaborations before looking at it as a whole.
Thank you very much, Atty. So a balanced perspective between the more granular collaborations and the broader perspective. Mourad, you had your hand up. Oh, I think you might be on mute potentially, Mourad.
Indeed.
There we go.
So I'd like to reinforce the message of Emily about the importance to engage people from different disciplines. We are witnessing a digital transformation. Nowadays, connectivity is everywhere. It's in building, it's in cities, it's in the grid, it's in the telco, it's in the government, it's everywhere. And from a cybersecurity perspective, that is a new territory. The set of problems and challenges that are emerging there have not been addressed fully. I mean, there is a need to work together to bring solutions to this. And the solution is not purely technological. We need people with technology background, with policy background, with legal background, with that people that understand the socioeconomic impact underlying these technologies, and so on. And I'd like to emphasize the message that within the National Cybersecurity Consortium that we have been working on collectively since 16 months or so, we are fully aware of this aspect, and we are trying as much as we can to engage people with different backgrounds to bring a solution to the challenges that we see in the area of cybersecurity and privacy. And to the other questions, who should initiate that? I think we need leadership from government, we need leadership from industry, and we need leadership from academia to make this happening. From our side, from academia, I think this is what we are trying to aim at through the National Cybersecurity Consortium, at least to bring the community together and engage collectively private and public sector organization to agree on a cybersecurity agenda in Canada and to work together to address some of the grand challenges. And to access wisdom, there is two ways: either through inference, by seeing the problem ahead and working on them, or through experience, which means facing attacks and then starting to do things or starting to work together. I think it's better if we start now, and I think there is a big responsibility on the shoulders of public servants in the government to facilitate this collaboration between the academia and the private and the public sector organization. And I hear very often people talking about innovation. And when they think innovation, they think of companies, right? And bringing products and services. Innovation is a box that takes as input IP, knowledge, and turn it into products and services. And in order to make the innovation successful, you need to nurture the box that will generate the IP. And this is the research that is taking place in universities. If you don't have intellectual property, if you don't have knowledge that is generated, you don't have innovation. And that's why we need all to work together, academia, companies, and government, and not-for-profit organizations that are active in the area of cybersecurity and privacy.
Thank you very much, Mourad. And I want to, we're coming down to just the last few minutes, so take folks' closing thoughts as we come to the end of this terrific discussion, but also to ask about how those challenges will emerge. So if we have sort of the umbrella network of network approaches that that we've talked about, balancing the broader perspective with the more granular collaborations, we have leadership, Mourad, as you've just articulated, from all parties in respect of innovation. Where do the challenges come from? Should they be delivered by government to the academic sector, to industry? Should they emerge out of industry and the academic sector? I ask because a question is sort of where do we get the substance of the collaborations that we need to have and that you've talked about? What are folks' thoughts about where those challenges should emerge from?
Okay, I can start by saying that we all, I think, agree that cybersecurity, as much as it's a problem, is also an opportunity. It's from the government perspective and industry perspective, it is an economic enabler. Better cybersecurity means better economy, better access to data, safer access to IP, etc., etc. So from that perspective, to answer to previous question from the audience, as well as what you asked, Charles, it's important government's leadership to recognize this, as much as we in academia doing this leadership of creating this consortium, as well as the industry, but government has a bigger role, because in the end, cybersecurity is an industry and is also an economic enabler, and we have to recognize that. We shouldn't always see it as a problem or scary things, more of something that we actually can economically benefit from that.
Thank you, Ali. And Atty, I'll come to you. I just want to, there's been one other question that we've been asked, and then Atty, I'll come to you for your thoughts on this. Intellectual property is only one way of measuring R&D output. How should we view the other innovation indicators in the context of cybersecurity? So that's a big question. We got about 3 minutes left. But Atty, you had your hand up. Over to you.
Yes, so I wanted to answer the question that you posed. So who should be proposing these themes for the collaborative project? So I think we need a consensus-based approach in defining what those themes, in agreeing on what those themes should be for the collaborative projects. So if you just leave it to academics, academics have been creating problems and solving those problems and talking about those problems as their main business model, right? So they do it really well. Whether or not that's something that industry finds, useful in the immediate future or near term or long term, that's a different story. Or whether or not that meets the requirements from policymakers, that's a different question. And then policymakers can come and say, well, these are our, list of, this is our wish list. We would like to achieve this and this and this, but the technology is not there yet, and it's not going to, perhaps it's not going to be there yet to in the near future to provide them with that solution. So, and industry the same. So it's important to all come in the same room, under the same roof, and then define these themes together that provides an alignment with what is the art of possible, what is it that you can do with the current advancements and cutting edge research that you can, and what is it that can be done. Well, the end users, either policymakers or the industry, don't know that that can be done, right? So it's important to be realistic from both fronts. And I think we need a consensus-based approach in defining those things.
Thank you, Atty. We have one last question. We got about 1 minute and 30 seconds left, but a question about incentives. What incentives would increase engagement with the various stakeholders? A terrific question. What would make them more likely to engage in a productive, outcome-oriented engagement? Anybody have quick thoughts on how incentives should be structured to drive this kind of engagement? and drive this collaboration?
Maybe I can start. So I think resources sometimes, if resources are put on the table, it brings people to work together. People will see that as an opportunity to come together and work. Also, incentive for collaboration if is well articulated, I would say, business case that shows the opportunity and the value of coming together and do something. So I see these as two incentives that might be appealing to initiate a successful collaboration.
Thank you, Mourad. And that actually, sorry to Ali, but that actually brings us to the end, I think, of our panel discussion. I want to thank all of you, Mourad Debbabi, Ali Ghorbani, Florian Kirshbaum, Emily Laidlaw, Atty Mashatan, for this terrific discussion of a huge topic, but of central importance in cybersecurity. Thank you to all of our attendees, and please come back in 10 minutes for our panel on training and solving the labor market shortage in cybersecurity. Thanks all of you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the second panel of our symposium, meeting our cybersecurity challenges, collaboration and training in Canada. This is our panel discussion on tackling the labor market shortage in Canada. My name is Charles Finlay. I'm the Executive Director of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, the Center for Collaboration and Innovation at Ryerson University, and I'm very pleased to be moderating this panel this afternoon. The labor market problem in Canada in cyber is very serious. There are not enough trained professionals across a number of different areas of the sector, and the demographics of the sector are not favorable. There are not nearly enough women or members of minority groups represented in cyber. These problems are having real impacts. They're leading directly to security failures as organizations of all kinds lack effective and skilled cybersecurity personnel to counter attacks and do other critical security work. We are thrilled to have three leaders in cybersecurity, in the cybersecurity industry, here to talk to us about the labor force problems and the challenges that they are seeing and the opportunities that each one of them is creating. And what we can learn from other parts of the world when it comes to answering this challenge. So thanks to each and every one of you for being here. I'm going to introduce you, starting with Kathy. Kathy Knight is Executive Director with the Cybersecurity Technology Center of Excellence at the Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology. Kathy brings to the role decades of experience as a thought leader, champion, and connector in Manitoba's tech sector. Assets she used to fuel the growth and reputation of Tech Manitoba, the province's ICT industry association, during her 15-year career as founding CEO. As executive director of the center, Kathy is leveraging her significant network and relationship building skills to forge partnerships with industry, government, and post-secondary institutions, as well as programming opportunities necessary to make MITT a nexus for learning, research, and innovation in Western Canada's cybersecurity ecosystem. Thanks so much for being here, Kathy.
My pleasure.
Joining the conversation with us today is Angela Mondu, President and CEO of TechNation. Angela has over 25 years of exceptional global and Canadian experience driving transformational programs in the tech sector. A visionary executive with a passion for leadership, Angela's unique career path includes 10 years as a military officer, 18 years in senior level leadership roles in the tech and defense sectors, including as a strategic marketing director with BlackBerry and a global solutions leader with Nortel Networks, where her team was responsible for delivering technology to over 127 countries. Angela's career has taken her through leading and launching teams in technology in several continents and dozens of countries. Thanks so much for being here, Angela.
Thanks, Charles. Happy to be here.
And last but not least, Max Schuften, Cyber Talent Program Director with SANS Institute. Max leads the cyber talent division of the SANS Institute, the most trusted and the largest provider of information security training and certification in the world. In this role, Max oversees all program operations, business development, and partnerships for the various immersion academies and assessment tools. And under his leadership, SANS Cyber Talent has granted more than 700 scholarships to individuals with high aptitude through Vet Success, Women's and Diversity Cyber Academies. Thank you so much for being here, Max.
Thank you, Charles. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I'd like to start off with what each of you are seeing in terms of the labor market in cybersecurity and how you see those labor market dynamics impacting our overall security. What are the biggest labor market challenges that you're seeing in cyber? Is it as big an issue as everyone is saying it is? I'd also be really interested in your regional perspectives. Max talked about the United States, Angela with the national picture, and Kathy in terms of what you're seeing in Western Canada. Angela, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Glad to be here. This is a pretty exciting topic, to say the least. Just reading an interesting book right now called The 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World. And there's a great saying in there: sometimes decades can go by and nothing happens, and sometimes weeks go by and decades happen. And that's the world that we're living in right now. So when you think of the acceleration of digital transformation, what does that mean in terms of the acceleration of the cyberspace and the world of cyber threat? And then what is the impact of that when we're living in a world of exponential increase of DX and cyber threat in terms of labor and the challenges that we're facing with labor? So when I look at the tech ecosystem nationally or globally from a cyber perspective, think about how many IoT devices, these are threat surfaces we have out there. And in 2025, we're talking about 75 billion IoT devices. And well, what does that mean to our country? Right now in Canada, in the last year and a half, our municipalities, our SMEs have been under ransomware and attacks from small places like Nunavut, Northern Canada, to Stratford, Ontario. Our universities or hospitals are being impacted, or big corporations like Life Labs with 15 million clients and all of that data that's been hacked. In fact, it's such a significant challenge in terms of lack of skill set, if you think about it, that we've actually at Tech Nation had to launch and have one going on next week, cyber best practices focus just for municipalities and SMEs, primarily because the skills don't exist in these organizations. Look at the other end of what I'm talking about in terms of cyber threat. In 2020, the World Economic Forum has cyber attack as one of the top global risks, everything from data, operations, infrastructure. And so when you think about that, this is ahead of weapons of mass destruction. So we go from the small towns and small organizations to this global issue of cyber. So when I think about the challenges and what does that mean from a labor perspective, I have it kind of coming down to three things. One is complexity, consistency, and speed. And by complexity, here's what I mean. Cyber is ubiquitous. No person, no organization, no country is immune. But when you think of the skills required to manage the challenges I just talked about, from phone security to global cyber attacks, we're talking about very complex and very diverse skill sets. So what that means from a labor market challenge is it's tough to assess the gaps when the gaps in complexity and diversity of skills are like this. And I kind of put this down to we don't know what we don't know. We're in a space that is growing rapidly, You look at cyber apps, everything from privacy and security to national security to fintech to corporate security. So it's very difficult for employers when they're looking for skills to even accurately nail down the kinds of skills they're looking for. And we're seeing that. I'm going to talk about that as well a little bit later, Charles, but in the data that we're gathering through our current platform, we're seeing that there's a lack of consistency in terms of what employers think they're looking for low or entry-level roles right up to senior roles. One of the other issues is that the skills, just because the space is changing so quickly. So here's the speed piece I was talking about. When you have an accelerated space like cyber, it's difficult to catch up in terms of skills from an industry perspective. So one of our members, for instance, who is a global threat hacking company, can't find the skills on the street. They have to train within, and they have to develop operational simulation programs, whatever they can develop and dream of in terms of the most senior, challenging technology and cyber skills required, they're building within. So it's difficult as well from a labor market perspective to find some of that really senior level, experience level skill required for the cyberspace. The other piece I want to talk about quickly is we just talked a little bit about the training and the education and companies having to catch up there. But when we look at, sorry, let me just think here. No, I think I covered it all actually. So in terms of, yeah, the complexity, the consistency that we're having challenges with, the speed, and then all of that coming down to the data that really we don't have a ton of out there right now, not a ton of consistency on. So that's kind of it. Complexity, consistency, speed, big challenges.
I think that's so well put, Angela, and we'll get to some of the leadership that you and Tech Nation are showing in terms of answering some of those issues. But just as you've described, enormously complex problem with different variables coming together at the same time in the labor market with the highest stakes, as you've outlined, just in terms of the municipalities and what they're facing, just as one example. So, thank you so much for those comments. Max, so over to you. What are you seeing in terms of the labor market and the challenges there?
Sure. Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I think the challenges are certainly complex and they're growing. It was actually ironic that yesterday ISC Squared released their new global cybersecurity workforce report, since we did have this panel today and I was reading it. The good news is they actually estimate that the global workforce shortage for this year is lower than expected, but much of that is due to there being less jobs available due to COVID-19. So it's not all good news by any means. There's still, they estimate about 3.12 million jobs in terms of a workforce shortage across the globe. The CyberSeek program in the US, which is a government-funded research entity, estimates that there's about 520,000 job openings that have gone unfilled in the US over the last year. I believe in Canada it's in the tens of thousands. I think you all might have some better data than I do on that, but certainly we've seen across the world there continues to be, a shortage and a complex variety of jobs. As Angela mentioned, in cybersecurity, and these studies all kind of aggregate them, there are very technical job roles such as a penetration tester or forensics analyst or threat hunter, and then there are less technical job roles like a security awareness manager or a cybersecurity policy analyst, in which the individual still needs to have some cybersecurity skills and knowledge, but might not have to be a hands-on keyboard professional. And that makes this talent shortage and problem more complicated in terms of how we solve it. And I think that trend we've seen just play out over the last 5 years is each year we see these big numbers of the shortage, but we don't ever really get into, well, we believe, as far as I've seen any study, within this nation, we've got X amount of technical positions that are open, Y amount of non-technical management positions or policy positions that are open, and then Z amount of kind of related positions, such as a business analyst who needs to use security best practices when they're doing their job so that financial information or PII doesn't get breached. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge overall, and the trend we've seen is how do organizations and government grapple with trying to solve that? Because you'll need different strategies to bring people with either security awareness, general knowledge and skills, or very technical skills into the field and fill those different positions. And coming back to your point about your question regarding the region, in the U.S., I don't think the U.S., even with heavy cybersecurity investment, has been excluded at all from the globe's cybersecurity challenge in terms of filling the talent gap. I think certainly with some of the larger companies in the U.S., Amazon, Google, they probably have less of a challenge from our discussions in terms of filling cybersecurity positions because of the prominence of their organizations and ability to hire. But small businesses, state and local government, law enforcement, medium-sized businesses that aren't in those tech verticals do struggle to find talent and fill their security roles. Yeah. I think in the ISACA study that came out in December of last year, 56% of the respondents said their organizations are at risk due to their security staff shortage. I mean, that's pretty powerful. If over half of organizations, and these are all security managers being interviewed, believe they are more vulnerable for a breach because they don't have enough talent to fill their roles, that's a serious problem. So in terms of trends in the U.S., we've seen the annual job numbers continue to grow, the number of individuals coming into positions not meet that need. And it's even more difficult for training organizations and academia to get a good sense of how many of who needs to be trained, because there's no real clear data on whether the person is very technical, needs to be cyber aware and non-technical, or just have general security awareness in terms of where these shortages are broken down. So the only other trend I'd mention is that we've seen a large growth in the number of positions posted as it relates to cloud security, as more and more organizations have moved to bringing operations, data centers into the cloud, and that is now the most in-demand skill set in the U.S. Or fastest growing, I should say, is cloud computing security.
Fascinating, Max, and thank you for that. And so interesting about the cloud security piece that you're seeing. We see some of that in Canada as well, and also the point that you make about the data of what exactly is needed and in what ways not being available, not always being ready to guide decision makers is a really important point. And further to Angela's point about not knowing what you don't know, many companies and other institutions not knowing what they need and not being able to create clear pictures of their training needs. Kathy, what are you seeing, and what's your view?
Well, certainly there's a lot of commonality across Canada in terms of some of the issues. And, I think that Max and Angela, in their comments reflected that. What I'm seeing in Manitoba, we have an unemployment rate of like 0% in cyber. We have, COVID, there was a bit of a dip at that time, and then the demand started to spike again in the summer, and then it's dropped again to the present. Now, I think the reason that it's dropped recently is really goes back to that lack of available talent in terms of the areas where companies are really looking for the right people with the right skill sets. So, what I've seen, and of course, being in the education space, I'm looking at this through the supply and demand lens here. And what we're trying to do is look at how the education pathways can be more clear and allow people, regardless of where they're at in their, in their career life cycle, if you will, what are the entry points that they can get to? Because the career pathways in cyber are not always that clear cut. And at the post-secondary level, usually, you're looking at right in cyber, you're looking at such a diverse set of skills that are required that it's virtually impossible to land on a generic kind of program that's going to be a one-size-fits-all, which is typically what happens in education when they're starting down a path that looks like it's a burgeoning area of opportunities for careers. So, you know, the kinds of positions that we're seeing and the related postings, I mean, even our employers are not being that specific about the preferred level of education. Like 67% of the job postings in 2020 have not even listed what level of education companies are looking for specific positions. And so I think that's why, you know, there's certainly an opportunity to look at, you know, how we can create those different entry points for people. And really with COVID, the fact that there are some industries that have been hit really a lot harder, you know, from an employment perspective than others. And yet there are people who are working in those industries or worked in those industries that have some transferable skills. So, you know, educating the public. And I think the other point too is how do we position ourselves so that we can actually provide a community service by being evangelists for good cyber hygiene across the board now that more people are working remotely. And you know, as Angela pointed out, you know, she's walking around with her own router so she can be hardwired into a connection. And you know, I had you know, my experience just yesterday working from home was that I got a message from my service provider saying that my router needed to be upgraded and I was at a security risk. And I was like going, great. But you know, I think there's also a paradox here too, because on one hand, we're hearing from industry that they need more people. You know, our advisory council is talking about that whole range from entry level, mid-level, right through to senior. I know that that several of our crown corporations have told me that they're actually looking to transfer people from within and train them based on their soft skills into the technology components so that they can hire them for security roles. But the paradox around the fact that we have low employment and the people who do have the jobs in the industry are so well paid that makes it a lot more difficult to attract them into positions for instructors or teaching roles at organizations like MITT, because we're not going to pay the same level of salaries that private sector might offer. I mean, we're still somewhat competitive, but I think that that's a big challenge for education. And so when we get into the next part of the conversation, I mean, we have some ways that we're looking at addressing that. But I think that that's going to be a challenge across the board.
And that is a great segue, Kathy, into talking about the solutions that that you and Max and Angela have developed. The great thing about this panel discussion is that each one of you has been at the front end of creating some very interesting solutions to this this labor market challenge that we've just talked about. I will say, just before we get to that question, I will, and I should have said this at the top end of the panel, but to all of those who are with us listening to this great panel discussion, please send in your questions, and you can do that through the question function on your screen. We already have a first question, which is a great one, and I'll get to it a little bit later in our time. But please do send in your questions, and I will ask them of our panelists. So, Kathy, coming back to you, and we'll do this in the reverse order of our original questions. Coming back to you, talk to us a little bit about the programs that you've developed or are developing what you hope those outcomes will be to those programs, and what you've learned from your work so far.
Well, what we're doing, we're attacking this from, I would say, probably two perspectives. So one perspective that we have is that we've actually started working with secondary schools, so middle school and secondary, to create very clear pathways into cybersecurity and provide students with an opportunity to earn full credit towards their post-secondary education as they follow that pathway. So right now, we work with the Industry Association here and with one of the school divisions or school districts, as I think they call them out east. And we've got a cyber defense program. It's the students, actually, we start working with them in grade 9. And right now, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. We have our first cohort of grade 11 students. Our commitment to them is that they would get a full year credit towards a post-secondary degree or diploma. And the interesting thing about that is that the grade 11 cohort's been with us for maybe, I think, going on 3 months now. And they've basically blown through our first year curriculum in less than 12 weeks. So the challenge that we have is that we may end up having to give them 2 years worth of credit towards a post-secondary degree. Like, we may have to give them their diploma when they graduate from grade 12 if they keep going the way they're going.
That's a good problem.
It is a good problem to have, isn't it? And then we're also having conversations with the University of Manitoba about a crosswalk opportunity where their students can come and use some of our equipment. But for these students that I was just talking about, we'd like to see if we can, if they want to pursue their post-secondary education at the University of Manitoba, we can articulate an agreement with them where those students could actually parachute into the third year of computer science instead of year 1. So that's an ongoing discussion that we're having. And then the second part of how we're attacking this is, I think this is all about collaboration, right? So if we're trying to create a supply chain, if you will, for talent in the province, what we think is, based on that paradox that I was telling you about, is that we need industry to be at the table with us and work with us to develop that talent. And so we've got some partnerships that we've developed and have signed with different organizations whereby they are essentially going to release some of their experts to teach specific micro-credentials that we are hoping to build out, well, not hoping, but our goal is to build out a suite of micro-credentials that are stackable, and so that you can, within a very short period of time, go from either foundational to a specialization, or if you've already got foundational skills, you can you can basically customize a certificate or diploma or whatever in a very short period of time, and get a specialization that can move you into an in-demand role. So we're working specifically with industry professionals that will teach one-off courses where they have a high level of specialization, and then we will be able to offer those suite of programming out to the community, to business, so that companies can either upskill people that they have working for that work for them currently. They can transition people from other roles into new roles, and then we can also open that up to the community for people who are looking for new career paths.
That's just wonderful work, Kathy, and thank you for talking about that. And you touched on a few themes I know we're going to be talking about here, your emphasis on collaboration is critical. Your emphasis on industry collaboration in meeting this challenge, I think, is absolutely vital. I'm frankly fascinated by your experience in terms of delivering these training to grade 11s, and they're finishing it in weeks, and you're going to need to add more. That's just a remarkable indication of the interest.
We're super excited about that because, again, it's creating that future pipeline of talent. And you know what? If these kids are employable when they're out, when they graduate from grade 12, all the better. Like they can continue to learn, they can continue to grow. And, we have one of our most successful entrepreneurs in Manitoba is a guy named Mike Legary. And he had one of the first security companies in Canada. And he started dabbling in cybersecurity when he was like 12 years old. And he's on our advisory panel, and he said, this is what I needed when I was a kid. And I said, well, I bet nobody slammed you for not being mature enough when you got your first job. And he said, nope, because, if you've got the skills, students will level up. So if you set the bar high, they'll rise to that. And so I think it's who they surround themselves with. So I think that we're really onto something with this initiative.
It's fascinating, Kathy, and it's so interesting about the change that's coming to us. You talked about micro-credentials, about, the length of courses, when those courses are going to happen in the lives of learners too. Not everybody is going to come out of high school and go right into a 4-year undergraduate, 3-year undergraduate degree. There's different ways to build these skills. So thank you for sharing that with us. Max, let me turn to you and take your sort of the answers that SANS is coming up with, many of which I know very well, obviously from the work that you're doing with Ryerson. Talk to us a bit about your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charles. I just wanted to say that, the programs Kathy talked about, especially for youth, when you see that kind of passion, is really commendable and exciting. And that's how I think we solve the bigger talent pipeline, problem we have in the long run, is getting young people engaged. But as we looked at the cybersecurity talent shortage and the various reports coming out, I alluded to in the first point of discussion, it's hard to kind of differentiate within those numbers overall what's technical shortage, what's a hands-on keyboard job shortage versus a policy job shortage, and so on. But when we looked at trying to do something to help solve that problem, we looked at, what is SANS as a company, and what are we experts at doing? And SANS has been around since 1989, focused on, technical information, now cybersecurity training, to provide individuals usually already working in the field with skills, knowledge, and abilities to better perform their jobs. So with that in mind as our core organizational mission, the problem within the talent shortage we decided to focus on was those technical positions. Those ones that, are SOC analysts, incident handlers, incident responders, and so on. The folks on the front line of technical operations in cybersecurity. So as we just, plan to build a few programs and experiment, this is back in 2015, I should say, with ways to address that shortage. Kind of in the same spirit as Kathy mentioned, we did want to work with organizations that could partner to help us not just design some programs that made sense for them to bring new people into the field, but also could give us feedback so we could improve and hopefully grow those partnerships and programs over time. And what we ended up designing was a program called the Immersion Academy, now also called Reskilling Academy, that was focused on identifying individuals with high aptitude for learning security, not existing knowledge or skills, but folks who had a critical thinking mindset, had strong parsing and reasoning skills, strong, deductive problem solving skills that often are the kind of skills that lead one to succeed in information security training, which we'd actually seen in various customers we'd supported with Western government, military, and intel entities that use those types of aptitude tools to bring people into their own cybersecurity teams. So using that to try to find people with high aptitude that we could then train in what we called an immersion academy, essentially a fast track to a cybersecurity workforce role. But at the same time, we knew that simply having aptitude wouldn't be enough. As Kathy talked about with the program she has for younger students, you need people with passion, because learning this kind of technical material, doing the hard work that is required in these types of training programs and certifications that you'll often take at the end of them, takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and you have to sacrifice, time in your personal life while doing that learning, and often still working a part-time or full-time job or being in other studies, as well as for many balancing a family. So we built in an interview process, an admissions process that really focused on measuring, what people were already learning on their own, how they why they wanted to enter the cybersecurity workforce, what kind of jobs they had in mind in the long run, really trying to press them on, recent books they've read, podcasts they've subscribed to, things of that nature, to find people that were passionate and had high aptitude. And so with that kind of front end of the process, we designed the academy to build on, after finding those types of folks, providing them a scholarship to take several advanced training courses in which they'd start by learning the fundamentals of IT and cyber defense and networking, and then move into more advanced training in incident handling and hacker tools, and then either more advanced cyber defense or pivoting into offensive security or forensics. And with that, we believed, since those are the same types of training courses and certifications lots of organizations and government and the private sector send their own employees to, that these students could validate their new skills and find jobs in the workforce. When we started this in 2015, it was definitely an idea. We didn't know if, taking folks with no professional background in this field, who had, if they had degrees, often had degrees totally unrelated to computer science, would A, succeed in the training, and B, get jobs upon doing so. That first year, we did one scholarship program called Vet Success for veterans transitioning out of service in the U.S. Had 18 students go through the program out of about 100 applicants. Most importantly, all 18 got jobs in cybersecurity, primarily at an entry level. And of the 18, they all also achieved at least one industry certification, with 17 of the 18 achieving multiple. So we felt like we had a model that was onto something, but we did get some feedback from those partners on ways to improve the program. One big piece of feedback we got from the employer community was that the students didn't just need passion and technical skills and knowledge, they needed soft skills and business skills. So over time, as we've expanded that program and launched a few others, we've incorporated career services and soft skills aspects to that program to try to ensure students gain the kind of communication skills, things as simple as how to build a LinkedIn profile, how to connect with an HR rep on an interview versus connecting with a SOC manager on an interview, how to work on a team when you're and not siloed, different webinars, resources for the students so that they have better soft skills and career readiness when entering the job beyond just technical proficiency. And that was the biggest lesson we definitely learned along the way, was incorporating that into these programs. What we've done since then is we've added programs in the U.S. called the Women's Academy and Diversity Cyber Academy to increase gender diversity and the presence of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the U.S. in this field, as it's not very diverse across the United States. These we work with different nonprofit partners in the U.S., like Women in Cybersecurity on the International Consortium for Minority Cybersecurity Professionals, to run each year. We've had, across those three programs, about 700 people go through them since 2015. And we've seen about 90% of the students succeed in the curriculum and get jobs in cybersecurity. So not quite as high a success as in those first two pilots, but we still regularly see the vast majority of students, get in the program, succeed in the training, and most importantly, find a job in security, usually at an entry-level position like cybersecurity analyst or incident handler. We've also been fortunate to partner with other organizations to build parallel programs. In the United Kingdom, we had the opportunity to support Her Majesty Government Cyber Retraining Academy with their government, where they reskilled about 90 people between 2016 and 2018. In the state of Maryland, in the U.S., we've been fortunate to work with the Maryland Department of Labor on a program there that the Department of Labor helps support for career changers in that state. And then, most recently, what I'm most excited about is the Catalyst Accelerated Cybersecurity Training Program at Ryerson in the Greater Toronto area, where the Catalyst is reskilling 160 people per year, from diverse backgrounds, with streams focused on women in security, I think career changers from legacy sectors, and new Canadian citizens, which is really exciting. And as a second-generation U.S. citizen, it's exciting for me to see that kind of program in a nearby neighbor, where you're focused on providing that kind of opportunity to transition for those newly minted citizens in a country. And so all these programs, I know I'm probably getting into time here, follow that same model, finding people with high aptitude, providing them the technical training to gain skills, but then also working on career skills and soft skills so that when they connect with employers, they'll be ready. And you can, see students go from jobs such as project manager or working in retail sales and end up as a security analyst 6 to 7 months later.
Thank you so much, Max, for that. It's incredible programming being led by SANS, and as Max articulated, the partnership with the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst and Ryerson University is an incredible one. We're very grateful for it, and a lot of the learnings that Max just articulated in terms of seeing the aptitude from learners coming into the program who have taken it upon themselves before they enter the program to do cybersecurity learning on their own, and that being a key indicator for their success in the program. Speaking to some of the enthusiasm, Kathy, that those post-secondary students or those secondary students, I should say, are showing in your program. So it's exciting work at the Catalyst. Angela, I want to turn to you. TechNation is a leader in this area, and grateful for your thoughts about what you've just heard in terms of Kathy and Max's thoughts, but also talk to us about TechNation's work and your leadership in this area.
So in terms of what I've just heard, I kind of wish I was 30 years younger, because I would go into cyber for sure, forget the military and be all over it. It's super exciting. And what you guys are doing in terms of the micro-credentialing and these diverse and innovative programming, we have to have that to be able to fill the space. What we're doing, which is also equally as exciting, but not focused so much on the development of the pipeline, but taking that pipeline and through a digital platform, we're actually developing an AI-powered platform that connects pipeline students from every kind of source, from your world, Kathy, from the programs you're talking about, Max, from Rogers Catalyst, and through this phenomenal back end that's being developed through some Canadian companies, if you will. And I do have to say, to start out, Charles, that we have been the lucky recipient of phenomenal funding from ESDC, the federal government in Canada, to help develop a whole framework for this cyber platform, but also the standards and foundation of the cyber skills, if you will, overall. So just a couple of things. One, I want to talk a bit about the kind of foundational pieces that we put together, and then how that feeds into this digital future trending labor market platform that will really connect the dots between all of this pipeline programming that's developing and all of the labor market needs that are out there. So the first two things that we've done and just launched this year, one of them is the Cybersecurity Skills Framework, which is really important in terms of just developing that taxonomy in the space of cybersecurity roles. So when I was talking earlier about we don't know what we don't know, and or employers aren't sure what to talk about, this standards creates that foundation in terms of the classification of the technical to non-technical, massively diverse skills that are required. The second important piece that we've recently developed, in fact, in the last 12 months, are the 22 national occupational standards around core cybersecurity roles. So that also gives us a foundation in terms of industry relevant roles or sub roles, which then helps drive this consistency in this space that is somewhat gray and exploding right now. So those are kind of the core foundational pieces that our organization, and speaking to the word collaboration today, we've done with industry, academia, government, public non-profit organization through a cyber technology alliance. The most exciting thing, though, that I want to share with everyone is the Career Finder, which is the digital platform. We just launched that in September. It is Canada's first real-time labor market data hub, and we've launched cyber as the first technology tranche, if you will. We have a heat map, a real-time heat map that's available right now, which shows in-demand jobs across the country in every city that's hiring and the emerging skills. So Kathy, when you say you have zero unemployment, that's incredible. I was just looking up today what Newfoundland, what kind of jobs they had for cyber. They have 13 jobs available. Manitoba has 60 jobs, but across the nation, as we speak, 3,400 jobs that range from everything from incident handlers and cyber ops specialists right up to security architects, and really well-paid jobs. So there's also average wages. So that kind of connects to the point where it can be tough for the SME in our nation who needs to hire cyber professionals when you've got these bigger companies out there that we're competing with. The platform also is built with a kind of based on that foundation I was telling you about, a library of the core cybersecurity job descriptions. So as employers are updating their information on jobs online, and we're pulling all of that data in, the job descriptions through this AI backend and machine learning backend is starting to normalize all of this information and create a bit more of a consistent data set for us. So we're fledgling right now, but this is how we're all going to create basically across Canada an understanding of the future direction of where these jobs are going and the needs are going. There's also an education portal on there that would connect every one of your programs to the job seekers. The next phase to this, which is super cool, is we're going to take not just the pipeline of every kind of student coming in, so whether it's new immigrants coming in Canada that need reskilling, whether it's post-secondary kids or high school kids, older people like me who might want to get into the industry. Through the data platform, we're going to connect all of the opportunities for training and create automated pathways to help that student in the pipeline understand how to get from where they are now, what pathway, what certifications, what online training, what programming exists to get them to that job that exists on the platform. So super exciting in terms of taking all of the programming that we're talking about here today and how do we connect those dots to the needs of industry across the nation. I'm going to stop there because I think we're probably getting close to our time, aren't we, Charles?
No, we can, I mean, we are, but I can talk about what you're doing in terms of these pieces forever, Angela. It's amazing. It's a critical resources for the sector, and just incredible work. I will ask you: are there things that you as you rolled out these programs? Are there some things that you've observed about the needs or the programs to meet those needs? Yeah. Are there any kind of sort of things that come to mind in terms of what you're seeing?
There certainly are. In fact, like some of the hot off the press kind of, I was looking this week at what are we learning and what are we seeing from this platform now. First, one thing we're seeing in terms of numbers, Ontario has 5 times the openings. That might not be surprising. Montreal's right behind Toronto. And then we have, just from a city perspective, we have Ottawa, Calgary, and Mississauga lined up. In terms of jobs and roles, I think this is really interesting. Hybrid roles are becoming the more common role. So not pure cyber roles are the most common, but these hybrid roles. So things like cyber plus something else are more the norm. An example would be a supply chain security analyst. that makes a ton of sense right now, given COVID and the entire world is based on supply chains, or security automation engineers. So I think that's fascinating, because that will kind of morph in terms of cyber and security starting to connect with other industries and other professions. Another area where we're seeing that, as well as with AI and risk and security coming together a lot. Education, I know we touched on that a little bit earlier. All but one role we're seeing right now has requirement for bachelor degrees. So education right now does seem to be important. I think that's interesting, because I bet you that will become the formal kind of education will morph into these other phenomenal abbreviated types of education that are out there that are becoming, I think, mission critical as well in terms of developing the skills in this space. So those were a couple of the things that jumped out.
That's terrific, Angela. I trust you guys can still hear me. I think I'm frozen on the screen, but as long as you can hear me, that's
yeah, we can hear you.
We can.
That's terrific. Perfect. Thank you, Angela, for those impressions. And I want to ask maybe a little bit about planning going forward for each one of you, but also taking your experience to date, looking at the programs that you've created. Let me ask a little bit of a science fiction question of you. Angela, I'm going to come back to you first on this and go again in reverse order. But let's take the premise that we all dream about. If you had all the money that you needed as we lead these programs, if you had all the money that you needed, what kind of a program would you look to create? What would be the target audience, and how would you do the program, and why would you create that program? Because apart from the program all the programs you're obviously already doing, what new piece would you look to do?
So I hate to be a little bit, I can't help myself, I have a military background, and I would love to build a program that would develop aggressive takedowns of bad actors who are propagating disinformation around the world. And, I think what we've been going through for the last year and the last month in terms of watching how democracy can be dismantled so easily, or perhaps not so easily, but this is a big global strategic challenge. And I think that cyber and the capability of, taking down these kinds of platforms that exist around the world that are really putting the planet a bit in balance, if you will. The target audience, you know what? They can be everything from kids. I was thinking about that. Remember Mafia Boy from Canada in 2000? He was a 15-year-old kid who took down CNN and E-Trade, and he had no training. But these kind of wannabe Elliot Andersons or Mr. Robots, that would be the target audience, right? People that they may want to be white hats and gray hats, or they want to do cyber hacking for good. But the cost and what they're working against, it may require some going against the law. So creating a school around that would leverage real-time exercises. So some in theory, obviously, some partnering with senior architects and threat hackers that know what they're doing, create a program around that. And it would include some, simulation training. When I talk to some of our members who are cyber companies and they need to create that real senior level capability, it's through operational exercises. So a real-time operational environment, I think, is how I would devise this training program. Work along the lines of, Charles, your Catalyst program and what Max is talking about, these abbreviated or micro-credential programs where you can insert the skills pretty quickly. But yeah, taking on the big disinformation challenge we're looking at around the planet. That would be my target and my theme.
Thank you, Angela. And as you say, all eyes, Max, have been on the United States and all of the circumstances surrounding the election, of course, in this respect. And Angela, your point raises again this sort of cyber plus piece. It's cybersecurity skill plus. I mean, in the case that you're talking about, national security analysis capacity, a democratic institutions analysis capacity. So we're talking about operators who have the technical skills plus other people.
But if I could just, sorry, Charles, interesting you bring that up, because when I was talking to the CEO of eCentire, he was talking about the need as you graduate through levels of skill set in cyber. One of the morphed skills would be that cyber capability with that global strategic awareness. So there's this whole political or geopolitical understanding as you become more involved in senior roles in threat hacking or cyber defense. That becomes an important piece of the technical skills at the base.
Very, very important. Thank you, Angela. Max, what's your blue sky dream program?
Well, it's similar to the second half of what Angela said, though I like the first half of what she said more regarding disinformation. So I'd like to actually steal that answer and pass the buck.
Go for it.
No, but joking aside, the focus of the programs I lead within SANS are on kind of adult or career changer reskilling, bringing new technical practitioners in the field, which is really exciting. But the numbers that the various studies throw out, especially the ISC squared one each year, 3 million globally, 500,000 in the US, that in all likelihood will not be solved by adult reskilling. That can help plug gaps and help organizations that are desperately in need for talent, and will, in all likelihood, reduce the number of breaches those organizations face by having more people in their positions. But I think from our standpoint, it would be creating a kind of talent pipeline program for young people. We have some initiatives that we're engaged in that support high school age students with gamified learning, but I think starting out, all the way from about, third, fourth grade here, so 9, 10 years old, with various kind of cybersecurity games and puzzles to solve that help students, as Kathy was talking about earlier, find that passion, continue to grow. And then as they get into high school age, 14 to 18, using gamified learning tools, and then those that do well, actually taking training courses. So when they're coming out of high school, they have these credentials, they're going through the similar type of academy programs we use for adults, and that, they can then come into the workforce. Maybe it's after high school, maybe it's when they're 20 or 22, after doing some apprenticeships. Maybe there are different fellowships that they could serve as security analysts for nonprofit and community organizations, which have one of the hardest times hiring cyber professionals because of the cost of hiring a professional and the salary ranges. So that's the type of national scale, I think, type program we would like to design if budget was no issue. It would be really a youth talent program in which you have really simple awareness-based gamified learning for, middle school age students, more technical game learning for high school students, and then moving into kind of the traditional reskilling training, although for them it would be kind of pipeline training and academies to jump right into cybersecurity when they become adults, and have different apprenticeships and fellowships to get some practical experience in a job as well.
I think it's an incredibly exciting approach, and it's been adopted, as you know, by some countries in part. I mean, Israel, for example, has a very aggressive program for very young people, girls and boys doing. I mean, there's a whole infrastructure related, obviously, to their national service in the Israeli Defense Forces, but they start very, very early, as you know, in doing cybersecurity training. So I think your program is. If I had all the money in the world, I'd give it to you, Max. Do that. Do that program. Kathy, let me come to you. What's your reflections on what you've heard from Angela and Max, and your sort of dream program that you'd create if money was no object?
Well, and I'm hoping you'll give me some of that money that you're talking about, Charles.
Absolutely, it's unlimited, so everybody.
Yeah, it's on the table, right?
Right.
I've always been a huge advocate, especially for cyber and for other, basically other tech-based vocations, if you will. But I'd love to see us have a model that is really based on competency and not based on progression because, because of your age. I mean, we still are very much entrenched in this Victorian model of education, and I'd love to see how we could create pathways for students, regardless of how old they are, based on their ability to master various competencies that are required. And I, very early on, I actually, a few years ago, I was on a commission that the province of Manitoba put together around modernizing apprenticeship. And to me, this youth program that we have is really based on a model of apprenticeship for young people, because there's a huge work integrated learning component to this, and lots of contributions from the industry into it. And the only reason we were never able to look at tech roles in an apprenticeship model that would provide employers with the same kind of incentives that you get through a trades program was really because, and I'm not trashing unions, but there was a lot of union protectionism in that. So I'd love to get rid of some of that bureaucracy and some of that protectionist approaches to how we access skills and education, and really look at sort of more of an open platform, and then also how I'd like that to include that greater engagement of industry, and that would also be part of a strategy that would increase diversity and inclusion in the sector, because as Max noted, this is an industry, and I was talking to someone from Checkpoint, and we were comparing some of the data around diversity. And so, if you look at, say, women in tech in Canada, the average participation of women is around 24 to 27% within the tech sector. In gaming, it's 18%, but in cyber, it's 10%. So, we can do a lot to support this industry and help it grow by, creating those pathways that allow more engagement. And I don't think it's just about getting more women to apply for jobs or entering into the sector. There's work on the side of industry to start looking at their corporate cultures and their practices to remove some of those systemic barriers that impede the success of not just women, but people of color, Indigenous, etc. So it's a big bucket, but you said I had all the money in the world, so that's what I'd like to see.
That is fantastic, Kathy, and I think you're absolutely right in those focuses, and now we're getting some great questions from participants. So let me we've got about 7 or so minutes left. So let me, and these are sort of jump balls, anybody can take these on, but let me ask some questions that are coming from folks listening in. First question is a terrific one. They're all good. What role does integrated learning, i.e. through co-ops, have in the cybersecurity sector? Is it feasible in cybersecurity as it is in other sectors, given considerations like security access? Who wants to take that on?
I'll jump in there just because we have a huge workplace integrated learning program, and as I'm sitting here listening, I'm thinking that we really need to emphasize the opportunity for cyber roles. So absolutely, there are entry-level cyber security roles out there, and certainly in terms of companies that want to take in interns or soon-to-be graduates from university, placing those students into a SOC for a 4-month term to buddy with others and learn, but also take on some of the tasking. I mean, as Kathy's pointed out, the capabilities at the grade 9, 10, and 11 levels are pretty incredible. So certainly, I think there would be a phenomenal opportunity here. And one thing I'm going to check on as soon as we're done today, Charles, is see how many cyber will jobs we've actually placed. But it's a perfect way of, I mean, this is the kind of profession where you need to learn real time on the job, as well as having some of that theoretical background. So the on the job will capability is absolutely the way it has to go forward.
Kathy,
well, we've seen the same. We've seen. No, I was going to say we've seen very high level of engagement from industry to want to have work integrated learning, co-ops, work experiences. We have no problem finding opportunities for students to fill those roles. So, and I think that, you know, companies are mindful of you know, what kind of access those students need to have, but they're still really committed to giving them an experience that has high value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the really interesting, and Max, come to you, but one of the really interesting themes that we're bringing up again and again is the close collaboration with industry. It just, in my view, and I think we've heard from everybody, this problem cannot be solved without it. I think that's a really important takeaway. Max, sorry, over to you.
Oh no, I agree with what Kathy and Angela said. I think, you know, if a company does not have a co-op or internship or apprenticeship type program to bring and help develop and find cybersecurity talent, they should be asking themselves why they don't have one. It's one of the best ways, certainly, be the students coming from traditional 2 or 4 year degrees, or just coming through, you know, programs the company has where they use some of their own training or vendor training. It's one of the best ways to find new cybersecurity professionals and get them integrated into the job, performing those job duties in real time and learning on the fly, and via different sources to bring them in. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, I recall that most organizations, at least in the US, had entry-level jobs for cybersecurity that said they required 2 to 3 years experience. It doesn't really add up to require that level of experience for an entry-level job. We've definitely seen a shift away from that in recent years, and more organizations. The big buzzword in the U.S. is apprenticeship, but you know they're very similar, intern, apprentice in nature. More organizations embracing those as ways, or other training programs to have the equivalent of that 2 years experience, getting a credential, so you can jump right into the entry-level job.
Yeah.
Kathy, please.
You know, something else I'd like to see is, you know, potentially companies hosting sabbaticals for some of their key people to actually enter into the education system and be able to, you know, work with us to teach. So we've got, I think we're going down that path with the partnerships we're talking about. But I think that would be for people who are interested in doing that but don't want to leave their careers full time. I think that would have tremendous value across the board, not only for the companies but also for the students that are moving into this area.
One of our members, who's a global cyber company, actually partners with educational institutions to help develop the curriculum. So there's this real, and it's so needed, right? Like if we want education to keep up with the needs of the industry demand, what better way to create programming than have the user being industry work with the educational world? So we're going to get there, and all of the programs I'm hearing that you guys are talking about are just like so innovative. I love it. We really need to go this route with this total collaboration.
Yeah, that's actually a standard practice at MITT. We work very closely in terms of curriculum development. That's never been an issue here. We've always had, you know, very high participation and uptake on that. We've got a great advisory group for cybersecurity here, many industry leaders. But, you know, again, I think that there's so much, I think there's a lot more we can do, not only, as I said, to benefit the learners, but also to benefit the companies. And in the end, we all win when we work together.
That is a fantastic observation, and you know the final question really that we've had from our attendees, it leads right into this and is exactly speaks to what we're talking about in terms of working with industry. How do we help employers to understand the importance of hiring individuals for micro-credential training programs. Many companies in Canada require 3 to 5 years experience for a junior entry-level role. Is this because we are risk-averse in Canada? Got about 2 minutes left. Anybody want to take that?
I'm gonna jump in really quickly. So we have a lot of work to do there, but tech companies themselves are starting to launch micro credentials. Google, Microsoft have 6-month programs to compress a 4-year degree now so that they can get the skills. So we really have to get the rest of the Canadian industry on board with that, because there isn't a need necessarily, right? And there's the skills gaps and the ability to create the abbreviated programming. I'll stop there and let the others speak.
Yeah, I would say just on our end, it's been really, and seeing others do this as well, trying to work with organizations or seeing organizations and encouraging them to provide leadership by having their cybersecurity leadership or IT leadership really try to build relationships with human resources and talent acquisition. Not in every case by any means, but many of the reasons that 3 to 5 years is written into the job description or the 4-year degrees required is simply because human resources, when writing job descriptions, approach this like any other technical industry, and it is a bit different. And many of the stories, you'll see of folks in this field who are leaders now didn't have 4-year degrees or certainly didn't have them in computer science. And so what we've done and seen others do is encourage conversations within organizations and letting security participate in the hiring process more, letting them help write the job descriptions to try to facilitate that change. And then we have seen some large companies, as well as even I think DHS, U.S. Department of Homeland Security now has some jobs in cybersecurity that don't require a 4-year degree. You can get equivalencies through certifications and credentials.
I'm seeing more buy-in for micro credentials all the time. So I don't think we have that. I don't think it's a big Rubicon to cross. I think demand is just basically going to say we want people who have the skills, and as long as we can verify that, then we're good to go.
That brings us to the end of our panel discussion for this afternoon. Kathy, Max, Angela, thank all of you so much for participating in this wonderful discussion. I know we could go on a lot longer. I think there's going to be collaboration amongst the organizations represented just on this panel. It's absolutely terrific work that all of your organizations are doing, and thank you so much for being a part of this panel this afternoon. And with the end of this panel, that brings us to the end of our symposium at CSPC 2020, meeting our cybersecurity challenges, collaboration, and training in Canada. I want to thank Atty, Mourad, Florian, Ali, and Emily, who were terrific panelists in our early conversation about collaboration in cybersecurity. And again, thank Kathy, Max, and Angela for their wonderful panel that just closed. Again, my name is Charles Finlay from the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at Ryerson University. Thank you so much for attending this symposium, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.